Thanks, Ciarán Comhairle. I want to welcome this bill as a member of the government which introduced the home care system initially. We obviously didn't get it completely right. Very hard to get it exactly right first time round. A number of deficiencies emerged, which are being effectively dealt with by the Minister of State in this legislation today, and I welcome that. What worries me slightly is that it has taken so long. I remember the fourth last Minister for State in that department actually speaking about this particular reform. So we've had 3 Ministers of State in the job. Now we have Deputy Butler as Minister for State, and thankfully she's been able to bring it forward. It's quite a complex and detailed bill. There's a number of points of detail I would love to discuss, but that's a matter for they'll be a matter for committee stage. I think really the elephant in the room here is the need for. Well, first of all, we always recognised and we always realised that social care does not come cheap. It's a very expensive system. I think this year the Fair Deal scheme is going to cost in excess of $1 billion to the Irish taxpayer in net terms. That's after taking into account the contribution from the nursing home occupants. But I think the elephant in the room here really is the absence of a system of statutory home care. You see, apparently the philosophy of all parties on all sides of the House, as I understand it, and practice, and the policy of parties at all sides of the House is that people who can be cared for in their own homes should be cared for in their own homes insofar as that is possible. They should be left to live out their declining years in the comfort and security of their own homes, and that only people who cannot be cared for in the family home should be taking up nursing home beds. But of course, as in many other cases, policy and practice diverge. So we have here now the peculiar situation where everybody on all sides of the political divide want people, are in favour of people being cared for at home. Whereas the law states that if you meet certain criteria, you have a statutory right, a legal right, to be accommodated in a nursing home under the Fair Deal scheme. But you have no legal right whatsoever, nor statutory right to home care, which is apparently what everybody wants. Now, I do know that the government and the minister intends to bring in a system of statutory home care, and to do that immediately. I think you'll be working very hard on that immediately. That'll be our next project after this bill has been passed, as I understand it. But I must say I am worried. I am worried because of the length of time it has taken us to get to this point. This is as I say, a significant improvement on the system that's there, but it has been spoken of for several years. So how long is it going to take us to get to the place where we can have a system of statutory home care? Because first of all, it is more desirable, it is recognised as more desirable for people to be able to live out in the comfort, as I say, and security of their own homes, if that is possible. And secondly, it is a much less costly system for the state. I mean, all the figures, I've seen various figures, but a lot of the figures seem to indicate that, it costs about, on average, and of course it's hard to average these things because conditions vary so much, but on average, it costs about one third to maintain somebody in the home, on average, than it does cost the state to prop up the Fair Deal scheme for people in nursing homes. So, you have a double benefit. I mean, the person is happier, people, if they feel they can stay in their own home and they can be catered for in their own home and their family are willing to have them at home, they would prefer to be in their own home. It's much better for them. It's much better for their mental health. I mean, all studies tell us that. But the added bonus is it's only about a third as costly for the state. So it makes no sense whatsoever to me that we haven't moved further on providing a statutory home care system, even as things stand. I mean, the home care system at the moment in this country is sporadic, it's inconsistent, it depends on where you live, there's a certain postcode lottery, etc. I introduced in the last Dáil a sort of stopgap measure to, allow people to access home care on a statutory basis while we were waiting to put a proper statutory home care system, which is to be carefully worked out, in place. And that legislation was actually passed by a huge majority in the Dáil. I think everybody in the House, bar Fine Gael, voted for it, and it was passed at second stage. And the Minister of State at the time promised me she would come back within 6 months for committee stage, but that 6 months has come and gone. It's about 3 years ago when I was promised that they'd be back in 6 months. But anyway, be that as it may. There is another thing I want to mention, a bill which I sent to the Minister recently. Now, I drafted that. The temporary measure I've just referred to, I drafted that myself. In relation to the second bill, I must give credit for drafting to Community Law Limerick, which comprises of a lot of very learned legal people and very senior counsel in this regard. The bill provided basically that taking into account the fact there are about 5,000 houses vacant whose last remaining occupant has gone into a nursing home. The bill provides that in that situation, there should be discretion to hand the house over to an approved housing body, which would then select somebody off the list of the homeless to put into that house. Now, the arrangement between the owner and the approved housing body would be a license arrangement, so that, the approved housing body didn't have to act as a landlord with all the attendant rights, duties and obligations. It would be from year to year. It would be entirely at the discretion of both sides. But the central tenet is that it would be somebody from the list of people who are officially categorised as homeless would be put in there, much preferable to the hubs and the sort of places we accommodate them at present. And this would also be a financial benefit to the state, because from the figures I have in 2019, the average cost to the state of providing emergency accommodation for a homeless person was about 36,000. Now, it has probably risen quite significantly since then, whereas even today, the average rent, I know rents vary hugely from different parts of the country, but the average rent today is about 14,500 per annum. So 14,500 as opposed to, say, 40,000. It's cheaper on the state. I know that the Minister, I've sent a copy of that bill to the Minister, and I know she's studying it, and I hope that if she can't incorporate it in this legislation, I hope that it makes its way, or some version of it makes its way out of the statute books in the not too distant future.